My mother stood at the center of the gallery, her champagne flute raised, surrounded by Chicago's art elite and our entire extended family. The walls around us displayed my sister's paintings, the bold, abstract pieces that critics had called fearless and visionary. I stood near the back, half hidden behind a marble column, watching. To Elena, my mother announced, her voice carrying across the polished concrete floors. My brilliant daughter, who has shown us that true talent cannot be ignored. Some children are born to create beauty. Others, she paused, her eyes finding me in the crowd, are simply born. The laughter rippled through the room like a wave, polite and knowing. Elena raised her glass, her smile thin and practiced. My father nodded from his position beside the bar, satisfied. And me, I felt the familiar weight settle in my chest, the one that had lived there since I was 7 years old. But this time I didn't look away. I stepped forward into the light and raised my own glass. Congratulations, Elena, I said clearly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I'm so glad I could make it, even though I had to reschedule my meeting with the Museum of Contemporary Art's acquisition director. They'll understand. The silence that followed was different. Sharp, uncertain. My mother's smile froze. My father's head turned. Elena's glass stopped halfway to her lips. What meeting? My mother asked, her voice suddenly careful. I smiled. Not the apologetic smile I'd worn for 28 years. A real one. Don't worry about it. Tonight is Elena's night. I wouldn't dream of making it about me. I set my glass on the nearest table, picked up my coat from the check, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the whispers starting confused, curious, urgent. They thought that moment was the revelation. They thought I'd played my hand. They had no idea what was coming. Growing up in the Palmer Square brownstone meant living inside someone else's vision of perfection. From the street, our home looked like something from a design magazine, ivy climbing the brick facade. Window boxes overflowing with seasonal flowers, a black iron gate that gleamed in every photograph my mother carefully curated for her social media following. Inside, the house operated on a hierarchy I understood before I learned to read. Elena was the artist. Elena was the sensitive one. Elena was the child who required protection, encouragement, endless patience. Her bedroom took up the entire third floor, a light-filled studio space where she could paint at any hour, where her mess was called creative process and her tantrums were labeled passion. My room was on the second floor, wedged between the linen closet and the guest bathroom. Small, functional, quiet. I learned early that quiet was what they wanted from me. My mother was a gallery owner, someone who built her identity around discovering talent, nurturing artists, understanding the language of color and form. She looked at Elena and saw her legacy. She looked at me and saw. I'm not sure she saw anything at all. My father was a corporate attorney, someone who measured value in accomplishments that could be framed, announced, displayed. He attended every one of Elena's school art shows, standing in the center of the room, beaming, introducing himself to other parents as the father of the girl who painted that piece. When I won the state science fair at 15, he sent a congratulatory text from his office. Good job. Don't stay up too late celebrating. Elena wasn't cruel. That would have been easier to process. She was simply oblivious. She accepted the attention the way you accept sunlight as something natural, expected, deserved. When I got a full ride to Northwestern for molecular biology, she said, "That's great, Ivy. I'm glad you're smart at school stuff." School stuff. As if the research I'd been conducting on cellular regeneration since I was 16 was equivalent to memorizing multiplication tables. But there was one person who saw differently. My Aunt Miriam, my father's older sister, visited every Sunday with her signature lemon cake and her sharp, knowing eyes. She was a retired professor of biochemistry, someone who'd spent 40 years in laboratories before the university forced her into retirement. She'd never married, never had children, and according to family whispers, never regretted either choice. She's the one who taught me that being overlooked wasn't a verdict. It was a vantage point. They're so busy staring at the obvious, she'd say, watching Elena command the dinner table with stories of her latest project, that they miss what's actually interesting. We'd spend hours in her apartment on the north side, surrounded by her books and specimen jars and photographs from field research in places I dreamed of visiting. She taught me to see patterns others missed, to ask questions that made people uncomfortable, to document everything. Science is about observation. Ivy, she'd tell me, you're very good at observing. By the time I was 18, I'd perfected the art of being present but invisible. I attended family dinners and gallery openings. I smiled in photographs. I congratulated Elena on her achievements and never mentioned my own. I learned that in our house, taking up less space was a form of survival. When I got accepted to Cambridge for graduate school in molecular biology, I told them over breakfast. My mother was reviewing a gallery contract. My father was reading the Wall Street Journal. Elena was sketching in her journal. England, my mother said, not looking up. That's quite far. Full scholarship, I added, plus a research stipend. My father murmured. Will you be back for the holidays? Elena glanced up. Cambridge is supposed to be beautiful. Take lots of photos. That was it. No celebration. No proud announcement to relatives. No frame on the mantle. I boarded the plane 3 months later with 2 suitcases and a sense of lightness I'd never experienced inside that brownstone. I thought distance would make them miss me. I thought achievement would make them see me. I was wrong about what I needed them to do. Cambridge was rain and stone and long nights in laboratories that smelled like ethanol and possibility. I threw myself into research with a focus that surprised even my advisors. Cellular regeneration, tissue engineering, the invisible architecture of healing. I was trying to understand how things repair themselves after damage. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. I lived in a tiny flat near Parker's Piece, barely big enough for a bed and desk, but it was mine. Every inch of it belonged to me. No one rearranged my space to make room for someone else's needs. No one dismissed my papers and journals as clutter while Elena's paint-stained drop cloths were evidence of genius. I made friends other researchers who understood the particular obsession of watching cells divide under a microscope at 3 in the morning. We'd grab curry after long lab sessions, debate theories over cheap wine, celebrate each other's breakthroughs with the kind of genuine joy I'd never experienced at home. I called my family once a month. The conversations were brief, functional. They'd ask if I was well. I'd say yes. They'd update me on Elena's latest exhibition or commission. I'd say congratulations. We'd hang up. They never asked about my research. Not once. In my 3rd year, my work on nerve cell regeneration caught the attention of a major research institute. They invited me to present at an international conference in Barcelona. My findings were preliminary, but promising a potential breakthrough in treating spinal cord injuries. I sent my family an email with the details. My mother replied, "That's wonderful, dear. Elena has a show opening the same week in New York. Such a busy time for both of you." The equivalence was staggering. A potential medical breakthrough and a regional art show weighted the same. I stopped expecting different. By the time I finished my doctorate, I'd published 4 papers in major journals. I'd been offered a research position at Imperial College London. I'd built a life that had nothing to do with them. I was 31 when Aunt Miriam called me with the news that changed everything. "Your mother's gallery is in trouble," she said without preamble. "Financial trouble. She's been hiding it for 2 years. I was in my office, reviewing grant proposals. "How do you know?" "Because I'm still on the family trust board and I actually read the documents. She's been using trust funds to cover operating costs. Your father either doesn't know or doesn't want to know. Elena definitely doesn't know." "Why are you telling me?" "Because you're the only one in that family who understands how to solve problems instead of just paint." I hung up and stared at the spreadsheet Aunt Miriam emailed me. The numbers told a clear story. Years of mismanagement, overspending on high-profile exhibitions that didn't generate sales, an unsustainable business model propped up by family money that was rapidly running out. I could have let it collapse. I could have watched from across the ocean as the gallery that had been my mother's entire identity crumbled. Instead, I did something else. I spent 3 months researching, calculating, planning. I contacted former colleagues who'd gone into biotech consulting. I reached out to investors I'd met through academic conferences. I built a proposal, a merger between art and science, a gallery concept that would showcase both traditional art and scientific visualization, making complex research accessible through aesthetic presentation. It was innovative, it was viable, and it would require my mother to accept help from someone she'd never seen as valuable. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just worked. The phone call came on a Wednesday evening. My mother's voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was pretending everything was fine. "Ivy, darling, we'd love for you to come home for Elena's big gallery opening. It's been too long." I knew what the opening was: Elena's first solo show at our mother's gallery, the culmination of everything my mother had been building toward. The event that would either revive the gallery's reputation or serve as its swan song. "When?" I asked. She told me the date. I checked my calendar. I had a meeting with the Mocha acquisition director that same week. They were considering purchasing a series of scientific visualization pieces I'd helped develop with a colleague. Real pieces, valued in the 6 figures. "I'll be there," I said. "Wonderful." The relief in her voice was palpable. "We've missed you." 3 weeks later, I flew back to Chicago for the first time in 2 years. The city felt both familiar and foreign, the same skyline, the same streets, but I was different now. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was Dr. Ivy Chen, research fellow, published scientist, someone who'd built something real. The gallery looked exactly as I remembered. Exposed brick, perfect lighting, my mother's signature aesthetic of controlled elegance. Elena's paintings covered the walls. They were good, technically skilled, pleasant to look at. They were exactly what they'd always been. competent without being groundbreaking. I watched my mother work the room, introducing Elena to collectors, emphasizing her raw talent and unique vision. I watched my father shake hands, proud and proprietary. I watched Elena bask in attention that felt as necessary to her as oxygen. And then my mother made her toast. The moment she said, "Some children are born to create beauty, others are simply born," something crystallized inside me. Not anger, not hurt, clarity. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their recognition. I'd achieved things they couldn't begin to understand. And they still saw me as empty space, as the child who was simply born. When I mentioned my meeting with Mocha's acquisition director, I watched their faces. The confusion, the sudden uncertainty, the realization that I might have been building something they knew nothing about. I left before they could ask questions. That night, in my hotel room overlooking Michigan Avenue, I made a decision. I was going to save my mother's gallery, but not on her terms. The meeting with the acquisition director went exactly as planned. Dr. Sarah Martinez was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built Mocha's contemporary collection into something formidable. She looked at the scientific visualization pieces, microscopic cell structures rendered in luminous detail, datasets transformed into abstract patterns with the kind of focused attention my mother had only ever given Elena's work. "These are extraordinary," she said. "Where did you say the artist is based?" "The artist is a collaboration," I explained. "Dr. James Park, data visualization specialist, and myself. We've been working on bridging the gap between scientific research and public accessibility." "You created these?" Her eyebrows rose. "I thought you were just the liaison. I'm a molecular biologist, but I'm also the daughter of a gallery owner. I understand both languages." She leaned back. "We want to acquire the series, all 12 pieces. We're also interested in commissioning new work for our science and technology wing." The number she quoted made me blink. It was more than I'd made in 3 years of research grants. "There's one condition," I said. "I want the pieces to tour first. A 3-month exhibition at a smaller gallery, to test public engagement before they go to a major institution." "Do you have a gallery in mind?" "I do. I didn't call my mother. I sent an email. Professional, direct, laying out the proposal. My scientific visualization series would exhibit at her gallery first, generating press coverage and foot traffic. The proceeds would go towards stabilizing the gallery's finances. In exchange, she'd restructure the business model to include science-art collaborations permanently. The email I got back was from my father. "We need to talk. This week. Can you come to the house?" I replied. "I'll be at Aunt Miriam's apartment on Saturday at 2 p.m. You're welcome to join us. Neutral territory. My terms." Saturday arrived cold and bright, typical Chicago spring. Aunt Miriam made coffee and set out her lemon cake, a ritual of normalcy before what we both knew would be a confrontation. My parents arrived exactly on time, a habit my father had drilled into all of us. They looked uncomfortable the moment they entered. Aunt Miriam's apartment was warm, but cluttered, full of books and specimens, the opposite of their carefully curated home. Elena hadn't come. She didn't even know about the meeting. We sat in Aunt Miriam's living room, worn armchairs arranged in a circle, no hierarchy, no head seat. My mother perched on the edge of her chair like she might need to escape. My father's jaw was tight. "Ivy," my mother started, her gallery owner voice in place. "This proposal of yours is a business opportunity," I finished. "One that could save your gallery." "We don't need saving," my father said. Aunt Miriam laughed, short and sharp. "Robert, I've seen the trust fund reports. You absolutely need saving." My mother's face went pale. "You told her?" "I'm on the trust board," Aunt Miriam said. "Unlike you, I read the documents." Silence, heavy and charged. I pulled out my tablet, opened the detailed financial analysis I'd prepared. "Your gallery is operating at a 60% loss. You've been covering deficits with trust funds for 23 months. At your current burn rate, you have 8 months before you'll need to close or declare bankruptcy." My father's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. He was a lawyer. He recognized facts when they were laid out clearly. "My proposal," I continued, "includes a complete restructuring. You'll transition from exclusively representing traditional artists to becoming the first major gallery in Chicago to specialize in science-art collaborations. It's an untapped market with significant growth potential. The Mocha acquisition alone will generate enough press to stabilize your current client base while attracting new demographics." "You can't just change everything we've built," my mother said, her voice breaking slightly. "The gallery is my legacy." "The gallery is 3 months from not existing," I said quietly. "This is your legacy, bankruptcy or reinvention. Your choice." My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "When did you learn to do this?" "Financial analysis, business strategy. I've always known how to do this," I said. "You never asked." Aunt Miriam poured more coffee, the sound of ceramic against ceramic filling the silence. My mother's hands were shaking. "Why would you help us? After everything?" "After everything?" I repeated. You mean after spending my entire childhood invisible? After you told a room full of people that some children are born to create beauty and others are simply born? She flinched. I'm not helping you because we're close, I continued. I'm helping because I built something meaningful and I wanted to exist in the world. Your gallery is a viable venue. That's all. That's not all, Aunt Miriam said softly. She's helping because she's a better person than you deserve. My mother started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just tears sliding down her face, smudging her careful makeup. My father put his hand on her shoulder, awkward, uncertain. I never meant, she started. Yes, you did, I interrupted. You meant exactly what you said and did. You built your entire life around Elena. You saw me as the auxiliary child, the one who didn't need attention because I didn't demand it the way she did. That's not fair, my father said. No, I agreed. It isn't. But it's accurate. My mother wiped her face. If we do this, if we accept your proposal, what do you want? Equal partnership, I said. My name on the gallery. Credit for my work. And Elena learns that she's not the only person in this family with talent worth recognizing. She'll be devastated, my mother whispered. Then she'll learn resilience, Aunt Miriam said sharply. Something Ivy had to learn alone. The exhibition opened 6 weeks later. The gallery had been transformed. Elena's paintings shared wall space with my scientific visualizations, traditional art adjacent to microscopic photography, a deliberate conversation between disciplines. The press coverage was immediate and extensive. Art critics who'd been ignoring my mother's gallery for years suddenly wanted interviews. Science journals covered the intersection of research and aesthetic presentation. The opening night was packed with collectors, researchers, university professors, and curious viewers who'd never set foot in a gallery before. Elena stood in the corner, looking at my work with an expression I couldn't quite read. It might have been the first time she'd ever been in a room where she wasn't the center of attention. My mother gave the opening remarks, and this time, her words were different. This exhibition represents something new, she said. A recognition that beauty exists in many forms, that creativity isn't limited to traditional media, and that we've been narrow in our vision. She looked directly at me. My daughter, Dr. Ivy Chen, has opened my eyes to possibilities I was too stubborn to see. This collaboration is just the beginning. The applause was genuine, warm. My father approached me during the reception. I read your published papers, he said abruptly. All of them. Last week. I didn't understand most of it, but I understood enough to know you're extraordinary. I've been extraordinary, I said. You just weren't paying attention. He nodded slowly. I know, and I don't have an excuse that makes that acceptable. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly, but it was acknowledgement. Elena found me later as the crowd was thinning. She looked younger somehow, uncertain in a way I'd never seen her. Your work is beautiful, she said quietly. I didn't know you did this. You never asked. She absorbed that. I think I've been really selfish. For a really long time. Yes, I agreed. You have been. Can we? She hesitated. Can we start over? Not forget everything. But maybe try to be actual sisters? I looked at her, really looked. She'd spent her whole life as the favorite, the chosen one, the child who mattered. None of that had been her fault, but she'd also never questioned it. We can try, I said, but it has to be equal. No more assumptions about whose work matters more. No more hierarchy. Equal, she repeated. I can do that. I think. 3 months later, the exhibition closed with record attendance and sales. The Mocha acquisition went through. My mother's gallery was financially stable for the first time in years, with a waiting list of artists wanting to collaborate on science art projects. I stood in the empty gallery the day after the closing, looking at the bare walls where my work had hung. My mother was in her office, handling paperwork. My father had stopped by earlier with coffee, a small gesture that felt monumental. Elena was at her studio, working on a new series, something different from her usual style, more experimental, incorporating elements of scientific imagery. She'd been sending me photos, asking for feedback, actually listening when I gave it. My phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Miriam. Proud of you, kid. Your parents are finally seeing what I've always known, you're the real masterpiece. I smiled, put the phone away, walked toward the door. Behind me, my mother called out, Ivy? Same time next week for the planning meeting. I'll be here, I said. It wasn't perfect. Years of neglect don't disappear because of one successful exhibition. My relationship with my parents was still awkward, still finding its shape. Elena and I were learning to be sisters instead of competing for scraps of attention. But something had fundamentally changed. I'd stopped waiting for them to recognize my value. I'd shown them not to earn their approval, but to claim my space in the world. And in doing so, I'd forced them to either evolve or lose me entirely. They chose evolution. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. 6 months after the exhibition, I gave a TEDx talk about bridging art and science. The video went viral, not celebrity viral, but academic viral, shared across research institutions and creative communities. Within weeks, I received invitations to speak at universities across 3 continents. My mother sent me a text, just watched your talk. Had to pause it 3 times because I was crying. I'm so sorry I didn't see this in you sooner. My father called, your mother made me watch the part where you talk about being invisible 4 times. She says she needs to sit with her guilt. I think we both do. Elena posted on Instagram. My sister is brilliant and I've been a self-absorbed artist child for too long. If you haven't watched her TEDx talk, you should. She's changing how we think about creativity. #ProudSister. The comments flooded in people sharing their own stories of being overlooked, of building lives in the margins, of finally being seen. I read them in my London flat, tea growing cold beside me, and felt something unlock in my chest. I thought this was about revenge, about showing them what they'd missed, making them regret their choices, proving my worth. But somewhere along the way, it had become about something else entirely. Freedom. I didn't need their validation anymore. The work existed independent of their recognition. The gallery partnership was successful because the concept was sound, not because they'd finally seen me. My relationship with Elena was improving because we'd both chosen growth, not because I'd forced her into acknowledgement. I'd built a life that would have been meaningful whether they noticed or not. That was the real victory. A year after that gallery opening in Chicago, I flew back for Aunt Miriam's 80th birthday. The party was at my parents' brownstone, but it felt different now. More people, more laughter, less performance. My mother had cut back her hours at the gallery, bringing in a co-director to handle day-to-day operations. My father had started attending my lectures when they were local, sitting in the audience, taking notes. Elena had moved into a smaller studio, something she could afford on her own, learning to exist without constant financial support. We gathered in the living room, the same space where I'd spent years feeling invisible. But now, when conversations happened, people asked me about my research. They listened when I answered. They treated my work as something valuable, interesting, worth discussing. Aunt Miriam pulled me aside during the party, her grit still strong despite her age. You did it, she said. You built a life on your own terms. You helped, I said. You saw me when no one else did. No, she corrected gently. I just didn't look away. You were always there, always extraordinary. They just chose not to notice. I hugged her, breathing in her familiar scent of lemon and lavender and laboratory chemicals that never quite wash out. That night, after most guests had left, my family sat together in the living room. No formality, no performance, just 5 people who'd caused each other pain and were learning, slowly, to do better. My mother spoke first. I want to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. We waited. I built my entire identity around discovering talent, nurturing artists, seeing what others missed. And the most remarkable person was in my house the entire time, and I couldn't see her. Or wouldn't. I don't know which is worse. She looked at me. I can't give you back your childhood. I can't undo the pain. But I can promise that from now on I see you. Actually see you. And I'm grateful that you gave us another chance when we didn't deserve it. My father added, I measured success in ways that excluded what made you exceptional. I'm sorry, and I'm trying to learn a new metric. Elena just said, I love you. And I'm sorry I never said it in a way that mattered. I sat there, letting their words settle. A younger version of myself would have needed this so desperately that it would have healed everything. But I'd grown past needing their validation. Still, it felt good to hear. Thank you, I said simply. Let's keep trying. I'm writing this from my office at Imperial College, between lectures and research sessions. The walls are covered with images, microscopic cell structures, data visualizations, a few of Elena's paintings that she sent as gifts, photos from that first exhibition in Chicago. Sometimes students knock on my door and ask about the art. I tell them the story, not the painful parts, but the transformative ones. How science and art aren't opposites. How being overlooked taught me to see clearly. How building something meaningful is the best response to being underestimated. Last week, a student stayed after class, a quiet woman who always sat in the back, who never participated in discussions despite submitting brilliant work. She asked if we could talk. I feel invisible, she said. My family doesn't understand what I do. They think research is just school stuff, and I can't make them see. I looked at her, seeing myself at 21, trying so hard to earn recognition that would never come on my own terms. Stop trying to make them see, I told her. Build something so undeniable that their vision doesn't matter. Create work that exists independent of their approval. And eventually, they might catch up, or they might not. But you'll be free either way. She nodded slowly. How long did it take you? Too long, I admitted. But I got there. She thanked me and left. I watched her go, hoping she'd learn faster than I did that your value doesn't depend on who recognizes it. Some children spend their lives trying to be seen by people who look right through them. Others eventually realize that being overlooked is a superb position for building something extraordinary. My mother once said some children are born to create beauty and others are simply born. She meant it as a dismissal, but she was wrong about what it meant to be simply born. Being simply born without the spotlight, without the expectation, without the pressure of being someone's masterpiece gave me something Elena never had. The freedom to fail, the space to experiment, the privacy to become who I actually was instead of performing who they wanted me to be. I was born into invisibility and I used it to build a telescope. Now I see everything. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever had to build your worth in the margins, if you've ever walked away from people who couldn't see you, tell me in the comments. Tell me what you built when no one was watching. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt seen by these words, subscribe. Because there's more coming and you won't want to miss what happens when overlooked people finally claim their space. The gallery is open. The lights are on. And this time, we decide who gets to be the masterpiece. Subscribe.